Can you say that? Every day, His grace still amazes me. I just celebrated 24 years of being saved this past week. 24 years ago, the grace of God changed my life. I don't know if I say every day I think about it. Oh, but I should. We all should. The grace of God is so amazing. It has changed our lives, made us new creatures in Jesus Christ. Nothing like being saved. Nothing like being born again. Let's turn our Bibles this morning to 1 Corinthians chapter number 13. 1 Corinthians chapter number 13. You can follow along with the sermon in the QR code on the screen behind me, as well as the bulletin. And I will also have the main points up on the screen that you can take notes with. And so we're going to be studying through 1 Corinthians 13 this morning. We've talked a lot about unity this year. This is the 11th sermon about unity. We've been studying from our theme this year of perfectly joined together. That was Paul's desire for the church at Corinth that he mentioned in chapter number 1. And through our study of 1 Corinthians, we have seen that unity is not something that happens by accident. You know, unity is pretty easy when you bring people together who are pretty similar. But when you bring people together from various financial and cultural and ethnic backgrounds, unity can be something that's quite difficult to find. But thankfully, when someone experiences the grace of God and they get saved, these walls of separation are torn down. Unity becomes possible because we all become part of the family of God. We get indwelt by the same Spirit of God that allows us to be together. It's amazing when you go on missions trips and you get together with other believers that you can't even communicate with. You don't even know the language with them. But you have a good time together because your hearts are knitted together. There's just something about being together with family. Jesus Christ makes it possible. The unity of the believers. And throughout this year, we've seen several principles that we need to apply to our lives that make unity possible. Unity requires purity and clarity and humility and deferring and etc. And this morning, we're going to look at the key to unity. Unity requires charity. When we think of the passage in 1 Corinthians chapter number 13, it's hard to go to any marriage ceremony, a Christian marriage ceremony, and not have this passage read. Really, even non-Christian people will read this passage. It's about charity. It's about love. And so that's what we think of. We think about the relationship. But the context that Paul is writing this to was not a married couple. He was writing it to a church that needed to learn how to function together, how to work together. In our last study of chapter number 12, we saw that unity requires collaboration. We saw that God has made each of us different with different abilities and different gifts so that we may reflect Jesus Christ to this part of the world, that we can function as the body of Christ here in South Riding, Virginia. God has gifted us with different strengths and different weaknesses. Some have the gift of administration. Some have the gift of hospitality. Some have the gift of mercy. Some have the gift of teaching and so on. And the Corinthian people, the people of the church there, they were all striving for the miraculous look at me gifts. None of them wanted to be the pinky toe of the body. They all wanted to be the hands and the face. They wanted to be out front with everyone looking at them and saying how great they are. You know, no one has ever looked at a pinky toe unless they're really weird and said, wow, your pinky toe is just beautiful. That is just awesome. That's amazing. And they didn't want to be that. None of them wanted to be that person in the background. They were all striving for the miraculous, look at me gifts. Look how great I am. They all wanted to be praised by all. It said in 1 Corinthians chapter number 12 and verse number 29, Paul asked, are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers and all workers of miracles? Have all the gifts of healing? Do all speak with tongues? Do all interpret? But covet earnestly the best gifts. So Paul is telling them that they're all desiring these different gifts of being preachers and these out front gifts, the supernatural gifts, that it's good for them. He tells them to desire, covet earnestly the best gifts. That's a good thing. You want the best gifts. It's the way you should want it. It's good to want the out front gifts. But, he says in verse 31, yet show I unto you a more excellent way. Let me show you a better way. It's good to want these other gifts, but let me show you a better way to go about it. And what is that better way? Well, that leads us into 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He says in verse 1, he said, though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, and have not charity, I become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains, and have not charity, I am nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned, and have not charity, it profits me nothing. You see, it's not about the gifts. It's about the heart. Paul stated that if he had the gift of tongues, but he didn't have the heart of love, then his gift was useless. He was just making useless noise. He said if he had the gift of prophecy or any other gift, but he didn't have the heart of charity or of love, then his gift was useless. He stated that if he did a lot of great things, but he didn't do it out of a heart of love, then it was useless and it didn't benefit him or anybody else. See, God is always interested in our hearts. When a guy came to Jesus Christ one day and he said, Jesus, of all the commandments that are, what is the greatest commandment? And you remember what Jesus said? He said, be a preacher. Tell other people about me. He said, no, you need to give everything that you have. He said, no. Jesus said, it's to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and the strength. And the second, namely unto it, which derives from it, is to love your neighbor as yourself. See, Jesus Christ said it's not about the actions. It's about the heart that's behind that action. God always goes back to the heart. He is more interested in our motives than our actions. He's more interested in why we do what we do instead of what we actually do. He's interested in the whys behind it. What is motivating us? And so that is what Paul is getting across here, is this aspect of charity. Why do you desire these gifts? Why do you want to do this? What is it about it that makes you want to desire to be in front of people and to preach? He said because the whole aspect of being a Christian, the whole aspect of unity, being bonded together, is you have to have a heart of charity. Now, what does that word charity mean? The charity is the Greek word agape. And it's often translated as love in our Bible. It's the selfless, unconditional, universal love. It's the love of God. It's the love that's mentioned in John 3:16. For God so loved. That's the agape love, the sacrificial love. He loved the world that what? That He gave His only begotten Son. It's the love of God that caused Him to give. And that's this word charity. And charity is a good way to translate this word, agape, because it's love in action. When we think of charity, it's giving, it's doing for the benefit of other people out of a heart, a motive of love. And that's what Paul is trying to get across. We must have a love that motivates us to action, a love that produces action, that causes us to place the needs of other people before ourselves. It's charity. And over the next couple of verses of this chapter, Paul goes on to define what charity looks like. If you were to go around our country today and you'd ask them to define, what is charity to you? Many people would think of Salvation Army. They think of Santa Claus out in front of Walmart and ringing a bell and the big red bucket that you could drop money into, or it's giving clothes, or it's helping. It's doing things, giving things for the benefit of other people. And Paul here defines what charity is. He wants us to have a good understanding of what charity, what agape love is all about. And he gives several definitions of what charity is and what charity is not. First of all, he shows us what charity is. In verse number 4, he says, charity suffers long and is kind. Charity suffers long. That doesn't mean that when you get married, I have charity, man. I've been suffering a long time. I've been married for 20 years. And that's what love was all about. That's charity to me. No, it's not that idea. It's not that you suffer long because of love. Charity gives you the ability to put up with other people. The word was used for a man who was offended, and he easily had the power to avenge himself, but he did not do so out of mercy and out of patience. It means enduring personal mistakes without retaliation. It means that you graciously endure the perfections, flaws, and differences of other people. It means that you give time for people to change and space for people to change, to make mistakes without laying into them. It's the ability to control one's anger and one's frustration. It's not quick to yell at others when they do something that you think is wrong. It's forgiving of other people when they do or say something that hurts you. It's being patient when others don't do what you think that they should be doing. See, God defines charity as long suffering. It's the ability to be patient with other people. It's the ability to put up with other people and not get angry with them. That's what charity is. Charity gives us the ability to put up with other people's failures. When other people make a mistake, it's forgiving. Love is patient with other people's mistakes, and that's needed in a church. That's needed for unity within a church. You all can't be like me and be perfect. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I'm the only one here that can be perfect. My wife is ducking her head. She knows that's not true. We all fail. We all make mistakes. And many of us are going to do things that other people look at. Why they do that? They shouldn't be doing that. Or why aren't they doing that? They should be involved in that. And it can cause us to be frustrated or angry with other people. And God is saying charity is long-suffering. The ability to have unity is to be able to put up with one another graciously and kindly. Not, I can't believe you didn't do that. You're fine, good to see you, but to your wife, you're mumbling about that person. No. It's the kindness, the goodness, the charity of one another. And tied into that, he says in verse number 4, he said, charity is long-suffering, suffereth long, and is kind. And that's the patience in action. That's the word that means it's useful. A kind person seeks to be useful to other people. Charity looks for needs and opportunities to meet the needs of other people without being recompensed by them. The word suggests a person who is gentle, who has the ability to soothe the hurt feelings of another, to soothe an upset person and help in a practical way. This love is tender and forgiving when hurt. Being kind is making life easier for the other person and serving them from the heart. It's the same word that Jesus used when he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That word easy is this word kind. It's the kindness does everything possible to lift the burdens of other people. It makes life easier for other people. It doesn't make it harder. That's what charity does. Charity gives of myself to make your life easier. Not so you can make my life easier. It's kind with other people. It's patient with them. It's willing to put up with other people and to help them along the way. And that's what charity is all about. It's being long-suffering, suffer long, and to be patient. But Paul also describes what charity is not. As he continues in verse number 4, he said, charity envies not. It's not envious. Charity is not bothered. Or when someone else is blessed or promoted or thought well of. Charity doesn't get offended when someone else is brought on the platform and is thanked for the work that they did when no one said anything to them about the work that they did. Charity doesn't say, I can't believe they're saying thank you to them and they didn't say anything to me. I'm out of here. They're not envious. They're not mindful of thinking about themselves. They don't care just about them. They're excited. They rejoice when other people are blessed. As he said at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter number 12, how that when one is hurt, the other hurts. When one is honored, all members rejoice with it. See, that comes out of a heart of charity. It's not envious of other people. It's not concerned about receiving praise. It's excited when other people are lifted up. Charity rejoices when other people succeed. It doesn't grumble or complain. That should have been me. Charity is also not boastful, he said in verse number 4. It vaunteth not itself. You don't have to be a celebrity or the center of attention. Love does not do things to get attention. Charity does things because they're the right thing to do or because they are beneficial to other people. Whether the other person deserves it or not. Whether they notice it or not. Whether they return the favor or not. Love does not do things to be noticed or to be praised by other people. Charity can work in anonymity. It doesn't need anybody else to say good job to us. We do it just because it's the right thing to do. Because I love other people. Man, that's so applicable in so many areas of our life, is it not? At work, you only working so your boss can say good job and give you a raise. At home, you do something special for your spouse and it upsets you when they don't even notice it? Or do you just do it to benefit them? At church, you do things just because it's the right thing to do, because you care about other people, or do you do it so other people go, man, they're a good Christian. Look how great they are. Look at the wonderful things they're involved in. Oh, man, they're so gifted and talented. Ah, they're great. No. Charity does not boast about itself. It doesn't do things for its own pride and lifting itself up. And it continues on in verse number 4. It's not puffed up. It's not puffed up. It doesn't think too highly about itself. It means not overvaluing yourself by focusing on your achievements, your respect and position, and your abilities and gifts. We've all been around people that love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about all that they've accomplished. Man, I did this, and I did this, and I got this grade, and I graduated from this school, and I was able to accomplish this, and I have this type of car, and I have this type of house, I have this type of money, and I serve in this way, and I do this thing, and I do that thing. Man, I am awesome. That's not what charity does. Charity doesn't puff itself up. It doesn't make work just so other people can look at us. Charity doesn't get angry when others don't do something that you feel that they owe you. Because charity helps us to realize that no one owes us anything. Charity doesn't think that it deserves anything. It's not low self-esteem. It's a real understanding of oneself. It's as Paul said, I'm the chiefest of sinners. I know who I really am. There's nothing special about me. I don't do these things so other people can boast about me or brag about me or so I can look great. I do it because I just simply love other people. Anything good that anyone else does for me is just a bonus. It's not what I deserve. He continues in verse number 5, charity also does not behave itself unseemly. Charity has good manners. Charity is not rude. It's courteous of other people. It's sensitive to the feelings of other people. It does not make fun of the mistakes or weaknesses of other people. It does not criticize others with sarcastic comments. It treats others with respect and honor. Now, I'm not saying you can't be sarcastic. If that's what it means, I'm in big trouble. Because that's my life, okay? But it's why. It's the motive behind it. It's the heart attitude behind it. See, I get in trouble with my boys a lot. Because they say things a lot of times the same way that I say it. But I can tell their heart is out of a mean way of doing it, right? It's like, oh, you're so ugly. I tell my boys they're ugly all the time because it makes me feel better about myself. But no, but they do it in a mean way. It's ungracious. It's rude. It's unkind. See, that's not what he's not saying that we can't do it just joking around. Hi, man, you're the ugliest person face the planet. Isn't it great? And in a joking way. But he's saying being rude with people. Charity doesn't do that. Charity does not have a rude attitude about it. It's kind to other people, as we already saw. It treats others with honor and with respect. Rudeness comes from thinking about ourselves, often at the expense of other people. Rudeness is often characterized by irritability. Some people have the motto, never pass up an opportunity to get angry with other people. Social media is festering of people like that. They just are always looking for a reason to get upset. They're locked and loaded and ready to fire. One word, one action, and they start screaming. Charity doesn't treat others rudely. Charity doesn't yell at other people. Mom, Dad, charity doesn't yell at other people. It's not rude, even to their own kids. Charity does not ignore other people. Charity treats other people with respect. He continues on in verse number 5. He said, seeks not her own. This is being like Jesus in the most basic way. Being an other-focused person rather than a self-focused person. The Bible tells us that Jesus thought of other people above his own self. And that's what the Bible says. We should consider others as better than ourselves in Philippians chapter number 2. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. You've heard some say that you just need to love yourself a little more. And can I be clear about this? That is such a wrong statement. You don't need to love yourself more. The problem that we have in our society is not because people don't love themselves enough. The problem we have in our society is that people love themselves too much. They're so focused on themselves. We focus so much on our own lives, on our own problems, and we don't consider the needs of other people. We need to love ourselves less and love other people more. We need to try to make others happy instead of expecting them to always make us happy. Charity puts aside my desires for the benefit of another person. It doesn't insist on everything going my way. Charity is not demanding. Instead, it puts others before itself. It does not seek its own. He also says that it's not easily provoked. The idea here is that charity is not easily hurt or offended. You met people like that? Every little thing, they take an offense to it. Every little thing you say, every little thing you do, and they're, oh, you just don't like me. Oh, it's because you're this or because you're that, and they're offended by every little thing. You know, the Bible tells us that great peace have they that love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. Charity is not easily provoked by what other people do. You know, many problems that we have with people are not because of big things. Most of the problems we have with people are over little small irritable things, right? It's not a big thing they've done. It's often little things, and those little things add up and they become big problems. This is often the case when we're tired or having a bad day. We're just not in the mood to put up with other people. We come home and our spouse wants to talk, and we just don't feel like it. So we're irritable. We get angry quickly. Our children are just being too loud. And so we're provoked. We're upset with them. Charity is not easily provoked. We need to be cautious of how we respond to others. Charity doesn't easily get set off by what others say or don't say, or what others do or don't do. It's able to control itself. That's what charity does. And that's what Paul is defining. He also says one final thing in verse number 5. He says that it thinketh no evil. This literally means love does not remember any evil thing that has been done against it. It's an accounting word. It's an idea of calculating numbers. See, charity does not count the mistakes of others and hold grudges until all the mistakes are paid for. You used to often see this in marriages, where one side is, you did this wrong, and you did this wrong, and you did this wrong, and you did this wrong. I can do this wrong because you still did these other 3 things wrong, okay? And it's an argument, it's a counting thing. You hold it against them, and it's a battle over these things. That's not what charity does. Charity forgives. And you can know when you've forgiven somebody if you don't bring it up again. Or if it doesn't come back to you anytime you get in an argument with someone or someone does something against you. You know true forgiveness has come when you don't get that irritation in your heart when you think of that person over that situation. You're able to forgive them. You've let it go. You've released it. You're able to walk with them again and have that relationship stored with them. And so he tells us that it doesn't think evil of other people. It doesn't keep remembering their past mistakes. And so we must be willing as charity to leave the past in the past and not to hold grudges one with another. And then he finally says in verse 6, rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. If someone sins against you, you don't gloat about it because they now owe you something. Instead, you're grieved over their sin because God is grieved by their sin. If that person asks for forgiveness, you're happy. You rejoice with them. When we love someone, we will not rejoice over their sin, over the consequences of their sin. But we're compassionate to them. And that's in every area of life. We often see that in political realms. When bad things happen to our enemies, they got what they deserved. That's not what charity does. Charity does not get excited when other people sin or when other people suffer the consequences of their sin. But also charity does not overlook sin. It does not overlook the faults of other people. It does not compromise the truth or take a soft view of sin. See, there's just a balance with charity. A loving person is willing to compassionately confront someone about their sin because they deeply care about that person and know that sin destroys our lives. This does not mean that we scold others or beat them over their head with their sin until they're changed, but we also don't just ignore the sin in their lives. We deal with it. And we get excited when they have victory over it. It rejoices in the truth. It's exciting when people overcome sin, when others leave sin behind. And that's what charity is. And Paul sums it all up in verse number 7. He says it bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, it endures all things. That the idea bears all things, it covers. It covers the multitude of sins. That's what charity does. It covers for other people. It doesn't highlight the sins of other people. It doesn't point out the sins of other people. It covers for other people. It helps other people. It protects other people. That's what charity does. We want other people to be thought well of. We don't want them to be thought bad of, so I'm thought better of. We want to cover the sin of other people and help them. That doesn't mean excusing sin. That doesn't mean whitewashing sin. But that means we love other people, that we want them to be thought well of. It covers sin. He said it also believes all things. Charity believes the best in people. Charity assumes the best. When someone says or does something, you look at it in the best light possible. That's such an important truth in the age we live in. Because how do we communicate most of the time now? It's either through email or through text message. And you can't get tone through email or text message. I learned something new when I was with the teenagers on the Alaska missions trip. I learned that if you send a text message and put a period at the end of it, you're upset with them. Because the sentence is over. It's done. Okay? You don't want to talk anymore. I said that, period. Done. I'm upset with a lot of people. I mean, apparently. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. Forgive me. And they said, well, how are you going to know otherwise? If someone's angry. And if it's all caps, they're really mad. They're yelling at you, right? And some people just don't know how to turn the caps lock off, okay? You got to see charity. What charity does, it gives people the benefit of the doubt. It assumes the best. It assumes the best of other people. When your spouse says something, instead of being offended by it and take it in the worst light possible, you take it in the best light possible. You don't know. You're not certain of how. I'm going to assume that they meant it in this way. When your spouse says, man, you're so big and strong, you're not going to think they're calling me fat. They said I'm big. That's not the best light possible. You're going to think hey, they like me. All right. This is good. Charity believes the best. It assumes the best of people. It doesn't assume the worst. That's where most of the conflicts happen. Most of the conflicts in church and life come because we've made a conflict without talking to the other person. We've assumed the worst. They said something and they did something, and so we assume the worst. They said that because of this, and we have a negative connotation to it. Or they did this because of this, and it's negative. Charity doesn't do that. Charity believes the best about people. They give people every benefit of the doubt and make them prove them wrong. Do that in text messages. When you read an email and something doesn't sit right with you, give them the benefit of the doubt. Make them prove that the way you initially took it was the way they meant it. Assume the best about people. That's what charity does. Charity believes the best about people. He said also in verse number 7, he said, charity hopeth all things. It's optimistic. Oh man, optimistic. Isn't it great being around optimistic people? People that always assume there's hope, there's a possibility, things can work out. It's okay, instead of the negative Nellies. Oh, woe is me. It's never going to work out. I mean, they're just not listening. We keep doing everything and no one else ever gets involved in this and they never do that and they're never going to. No, charity hopes the best about things. It believes the best. It hopes the best. It doesn't ignore or close its eyes to reality. But it hopes for the best and believes God to work it out. And finally, he said, love endures. In verse 7, it said, endureth all things. That's a military word that means to sustain an enemy's assault. It has the idea of enduring under trial, persevering despite difficulties. Love endures everything. All kinds of pressure, affliction, difficulty, victory, defeat. Love endures. Love goes through the hard times with hope. And is able to keep going and keep going and keep going. Charity remains in the battle and advances toward the victory. And to top it all off, Paul closes in verse 8, charity never fails. It never stops. Though all the amazing gifts, this is where he ties it all back together here. He said in verse 8, charity never fails, but whether it be prophecies, those spiritual gifts that they all wanted, guess what's going to happen to them? They're going to fail. Whether it be tongues, they're going to cease. Whether it be knowledge, it's going to vanish away. That's the same word, fail. It's going to disappear. For we know in part now, we prophesy in part, but that which is perfect is come. When Jesus Christ comes, when we see Him face to face, He said, then I will know even as I am known. And what abides? What's going to be left? Faith, hope, charity, love. See, it's not about the spiritual gifts. Those are going to disappear. What's going to last for all of eternity is our love. That is what God is concerned about. He is concerned about our motive. When we get to heaven, if we preached, but we didn't do it out of a heart of love, that's not going to endure forever. We're going to lose that gift of preaching. But if we love people, if we love like Jesus Christ, that endures forever. That's never going to change. That's going to be the same for all of eternity. Charity never fails. It never ends. And that's what Paul is trying to get to here. These people, in the context of this passage, were so focused on their spiritual gifts. They were so focused on how they could advance themselves and look good. And Paul says that unity is not produced by all your spiritual gifts. Unity is produced by charity. Unity requires charity. If everyone in Community Baptist Church is patient and kind and wanting the best for one another and believing the best about one another, what do you think that's going to produce? Is that going to produce fighting, or is that going to produce harmony? If you and your wife are willing to put the needs of the other before your own, do you think you're going to have fighting or unity in your marriage? Unless you're fighting about putting the other before themselves. No, you. No, you. No, you. Those are good fights, okay? That's okay. No, you pick it. No, you pick it. That's okay. And eventually I win those. I'm more stubborn than my wife. See, we could have the most gifted and the most talented church in the world. But if we don't have charity, we're not going to accomplish anything for Jesus Christ. We can be the least gifted church in all the world. But if we have charity, we'll accomplish much for Jesus Christ. Remember when Jesus was talking to his disciples? He said, all men will know you're my disciples because you're telling everyone else about me. No. Or because you're speaking in tongues. No. He said, all men will know you're my disciples by your love one for another. The thing that makes a church so different and that makes a church powerful because it's united is because it's a church that truly loves one another. It's a church that's charitable one to another, that cares about one another, that isn't inward focused, it's outward focused. If we are a church that truly loves God, that truly loves one another, and that truly loves our world, we're going to make an amazing impact for Jesus Christ. But if we're a church that has people that are only focused inward and on ourselves, and gets aggravated and irritated over every little thing, we're not going to be effective. The key to unity, the key to being effective as a church is the one word, and it's a powerful word, the word charity. Are you charitable? As I read through these descriptions, did that describe you in your everyday life? Did that describe you in church? Did that describe you in your home? Does that describe you in your neighborhood, in your workplace? Is that you? Do you have these characteristics of charity flowing out of your life? Or do you often have the other things? May God help us to be a loving and charitable people and apply these truths to our lives. Let us pray together. Father, thank you for your...
Thank you for joining us for part of a Sunday service at Community Baptist Church. I hope to meet you soon. May God impress His love upon your heart this week.